We'll have some discussion on what can prevent continuance to a stage 2, our recommendations on responding and being ready for the stage 2, and then some concluding remarks and your questions. Now, as to why we have a two-stage process for certification, PJR, as you I'm sure are aware, we are an accredited registrar, and one of the requirements that we are held accountable to as an accredited registrar are the requirements found in ISO 17021. Now, within that standard, there is a clause that reads in part, the initial certification audit of a management system shall be conducted in 2 stages, stage 1 and stage 2. Now, part of why the accreditation bodies made this the requirement, because many years ago you used to be able to get it done in a single step. It was called a registration audit back then. But part of what they wanted to do in going to a 2-stage process was to ensure that only those companies that are truly prepared for a certification assessment, only those companies be the ones to complete the full audit. In other words, if you had a 5-day audit scheduled to be certified and the auditor showed up on day 1 and within an hour has uncovered essentially no quality system whatsoever, that's obviously a waste of your time, that's a waste of the auditor's time, a waste of the registrar's resources. So this 2-stage process was intended to prevent that from happening. Now, the steps that lead up to a stage 1 audit begin with quotation. You must be a PJR contracted client before we can do a stage 1 audit at your facility. And we use a series of applications to get things moving. These are all under what we call the F1 series. And what the F1 series are intended to do, they're dense documents, they're complex documents, and we have them, they're scope specific. We have one for ISO 9001, we have an F1 for TS 16949, we have an F1 for R2, and so forth. And we want to gather a multitude of information. The more information we have, the more competitive our quote can be. And if you give us a lot of information on the F1, we can, early on, we can identify logistical challenges, readiness challenges, and so forth. Now, in terms of time discounts, you may or may not be aware that we have some latitude to reduce audit time. That's actually stipulated by the IAF, that's the International Accreditation Forum, mandatory document 5. And that gives us some ground rules in terms of the audit time that we can assign. We're allowed to deduct up to 30% of the total audit time from those rules. Now, if you have competitors that are telling you that you can do better than that, be careful, because that may mean that they're not following the official rules and they may not be accredited if that's what they're telling you. Now, once you get past the contractual phase, you will be assigned to what we call an audit program coordinator. You will likely know them as your scheduler. And the scheduler is going to be your primary point of contact. They're going to, as you say, give you cradle-to-grave client management. The scheduler is the one that's responsible for figuring out who your auditor is going to be. And they're going to ensure that the auditor is, first of all, qualified in the standard that you're seeking and competent in your technical area. Now, obviously, they're also going to try very hard to provide someone that is in a geographically friendly location. We know that travel can be expensive, so wherever possible, we do try to assign an auditor that is within reach of your facility. Now, part of what you will receive from the scheduler is a document that it's an attestation of your readiness. We call it the F-108, and again, there's a series of these depending on the scope that you're seeking. The F-108 requires you to attest to your readiness, and it's basically a yes-no checklist, and you fill this document out and you confirm in an official way that you've got everything together for your stage 1 audit. And so what are some of these things that you're asked to commit to? That your scope has been defined, that your exclusions and exemptions are known, that you know what your processes are, that you've determined how those processes interact, that you have process measurables. These are sometimes referred to as KPIs, key performance or key process indicators, that you have your performance data for those KPIs, that you have completed the PJR F191. This is a grid that you're asked to put together showing the interaction between your processes and the clauses of the standard. That you have conducted an internal audit and that your internal auditors were qualified under your requirements. That you've conducted a management review and have the minutes to show the management review. That you know what your applicable outsourced processes are and how to control them. That you know what the applicable statutory and regulatory requirements are and that you have implemented them. And finally, now this is going to vary obviously by standard, but that you have put together the required documentation. So for example, if the standard that you're seeking certification to is TS 16949, one of the things you're required to have for TS 16949 is a procedure for corrective action. So you would confirm on the F-108 that those things have been put together. Now, in terms of how the Stage 1 audit itself is carried out and what the steps are, we do, for ISO 9001, permit that the Stage 1 audit be conducted off-site without a visit to your facility. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to be aware of for that. There is some savings, obviously, in travel cost, but in the end, it means more on-site audit time. The balance of what would have been the on-site Stage 1 is added to the Stage 2, and in most cases, it's going to work out to more on-site time than it would have been. Again, this is per the rules of the IAF. Now, all other scopes and complex systems under ISO 9001, the Stage 1 is conducted on-site. Now, prior to the auditor's arrival, you should be contacted by your auditor at least a few days in advance, and preferably more like a week or two. This would be the case whether the audit is being done on-site or not. And you should receive an audit plan. It is PJR's policy that an audit plan be prepared for the Stage 1 assessment. What we ask is when you receive the audit plan from the auditor, take a look at it. Look to be sure that all the information on that audit plan is correct and let your auditor know if it isn't correct. Now, when the auditor arrives, we require that the Stage 1 audit include an opening meeting. And this is really a great chance for you to confirm any last-minute changes. Make sure the auditor is aware of critical information. You know, if you're going to have any other visitors, if you're going to have key people that might not be available for a few hours, things of this nature, last-minute issues and so forth. The opening meeting is a real good chance to get the audit off to a great start. And from there, the audit will proceed according to the auditor's plan. Now, in most cases, what happens in the Stage 1 is the auditor follows the order of questions from PJR's Stage 1 workbook. We have the items listed in a certain order, and the auditor will simply go through that workbook and request the information from you. And this is all information that's spelled out on that F-108 that you had to fill out. So all of the applicable documentation, your management reviews, your internal audits, and so forth. These are all things that you'll be asked for. There should be no surprises in terms of what the auditor is asking to see because it's all things that were requested of you on the F-108. Now, nearly everything that's looked at in a Stage 1 audit is documentation-based in nature. And we give our auditors two options for the items that they are reviewing. When they draw a conclusion, it's either to say that what they're looking at conforms to the applicable requirement or there is a concern. And a concern essentially is anything that represents a disconnect between your implemented process and the related requirements from the applicable standard. And there's a lot of different things that can raise concerns in the audit. We're going to be going over those in just a few minutes here. Now, once the auditor has completed their review of the required materials, they're typically going to need some time to prepare their audit report. Now, the audit report is the primary deliverable from the Stage 1 audit. There are actually no official nonconformances issued in a Stage 1 audit. There are simply noted concerns. Now, once the auditor has put their report together, there will be a closing meeting. And the closing meeting will discuss the final conclusion, the final outcome. And there are three possible outcomes from a Stage 1 audit. You could be recommended for continuance to Stage 2 with no concerns. That's obviously the ideal result. Recommend for continuance to Stage 2 with concerns, and again, we'll go over what some of those might be. And in some cases, the outcome could be that you are going to have to repeat the Stage 1 audit. Now, once all of that has been discussed, you'll be asked to sign an acknowledgement of the Stage 1 results, and you will be given a copy of the completed report. Now, once in a while, travel circumstances and so forth, it may be a few additional days before you receive the finalized report, but we do try to impress on our auditors the importance of having the completed Stage 1 audit report in your hands at the conclusion of the Stage 1 audit. Now, what are some things that can represent concerns and potentially prevent continuance to the Stage 2 audit? We're going to go through these here, and these are in no particular order of importance, but these are the items that seem to come up and raise issues. And the first of these is an inadequate or inappropriate interaction of processes. Obviously, these standards require you to identify what are your processes. How do your processes interact with each other? If we are given an interaction of processes that is a replication of the Plan, Do, Check, Act diagram from the standard, if we are given a interaction of processes document that is canned from a consultant, something that is just completely disconnected from what we are seeing and what we are being told are your processes, these are going to raise concern for us. You should strive to document your interaction in such a way that it's unique to your organization and that it's reflective of what your processes are. Now, we actually have an additional webinar that we give called The Interaction of Processes and Its Importance to a Successful Audit. That presentation is given every other month. We have already given it in the past, so it's available under previously recorded webinars. I do encourage you to review that webinar and make sure that your interaction of processes is as strong and specific to what you do as it can possibly be. The interaction of processes is often the single best indicator of your organization's understanding of the process approach that's prescribed in ISO 9001. It's very important that it be done properly and that it be reflective of your organization and your processes. Another issue that can come up is a system where the processes have been defined, but there are inadequate process measurables or process performance data. Now, for example, both versions of ISO 9001 require your organization to monitor, measure where applicable, and analyze your processes. Now, that is interpreted as meaning that every single process on your interaction of processes should be monitored or measured. And there should be performance data available to prove that you are doing this monitoring and measurement. Now, some standards have requirements on the amount of data that must be available. For example, TS 16949 requires a 12-month period of data be available for full certification to be granted. For other standards, as long as we have enough evidence to substantiate that you've implemented the measurable and that you have data and have analyzed that data, it's going to be sufficient. Now, I'll hasten to add, for a lot of organizations, particularly companies that are seeking a simple ISO 9001 certification, there are oftentimes going to be just a handful of process effectiveness measures. And the intent is that these things will cover all of your processes. That's absolutely considered acceptable and appropriate. We need to be able to see that for your processes that you have process measures in place to show that the entirety of your quality system, that there's a measure or measures of effectiveness. Another item that can come up is a concern pertaining to your internal audit. Now, when we look at internal audit records, there's a number of things that we're looking for. We need to see evidence that internal audits have been planned. We need to see evidence that all of your processes and the related requirements were audited. Now, oftentimes, we'll look at records and we'll see, oh, there's concerns about how in-depth the audit was, or that processes were missed. We are looking to see that any nonconformances that were discovered have been documented, and that you've implemented corrective action for those nonconformances. That's huge. You need to be implementing your response to those items. In some standards, you're required to have a procedure for internal audits. We're going to verify that you have the procedure and that you're following the procedure. And then obviously that your auditors are not auditing their own work. That is expressly forbidden by all of the standards. Now, we can recommend that you continue to stage 2 in certain circumstances where there are concerns with the internal audit. For example, if you have not conducted your internal audit or conducted the full internal audit, but we're able to see evidence that it's been planned and that it will be completed in time for the stage 2. We will still recommend continuance to the stage 2. Now, in that situation, there's a downside to that. You do lose the benefit of getting feedback on your internal audit prior to the stage 2. So again, remember, stage 1, there's no nonconformances. Stage 2, obviously, there are nonconformances. So if there was an issue with the internal audit and you're told about it in advance during the stage 1, you'll have a chance to remedy that ahead of the stage 2. Now, we may also raise concerns on the competency of your internal auditors. Now, the thing to bear in mind with competency is that you are the owners of the quality management system. This is your system, and it's up to you to define what it means to be competent and qualified. And that extends to internal auditors as well. So our expectation is that you will have a process in place and some stipulations, and that you will follow that through and make sure that your internal auditors meet those competency requirements. Now, some standards in industries require additional provisions. Sometimes in automotive, some of these other scopes, there are industry-specific or standard-specific competency requirements. We will obviously follow up on those where they apply as well. If you have not done an effective job with your management review, that can prevent continuance as well. We encourage you to make sure that your management review minutes ensure that all of the inputs and outputs have been addressed. Now, PowerPoint slides are a very popular method for demonstrating what was discussed in the management review. Bear in mind that PowerPoint slides are good, but we also need to see the results of the discussion. ISO 9001 talks about decisions and actions outputting from the management review process. The slides may or may not show what those decisions or actions were. So bear in mind there's a difference between the management review presentation and the management review minutes. Now here again, we can still recommend you to continue to stage 2 if you've not had your management review or if it's only partially complete. And again, the same guidelines apply as what we talked about earlier with the internal audit. If we feel confident that it will be completed prior to stage 2, you will be allowed to continue to stage 2, but again, you lose the benefit of feedback on the management review if this is the situation. Now, all conclusions pertaining to a stage 1 are subject to executive committee concurrence. Our auditors are required to turn in their stage 1 audit reports where they are reviewed by the PJR executive committee. And we're looking at the report to make sure that the decisions reached are appropriate and fair. And additionally, as our client, you are afforded the right to issue a dispute or appeal of the auditor's decision. You're also allowed to appeal an executive committee decision. The process for dispute or appeal is discussed in PGR Procedure Pro 10, and Pro 10 is available anytime on our website. Now, if you are recommended to repeat the stage 1 audit, we encourage you to work from your audit report to shore up all the issues that were raised. You know, we always tell our auditors, you finish that stage 1 audit. Make sure that it's complete and that all of the things that are to be assessed are given a review. You are absolutely permitted to remain in contact with your auditor and with the PGR Executive Committee to discuss your remediation actions and to make sure that you're on the right path to a better result during your next stage 1 audit. Now, if the recommendation is to proceed to stage 2, ideally there will be a minimum of 30 days between the stage 1 and stage 2 audits. And we prefer a wider window, more like 60 to 75 days. And bear in mind that if you have a stage 1 audit and your plan is to have the stage 2 audit the next week, and you have a stage 1 audit with a lot of concerns and you have to repeat it, well, now we're running into issues with PJR's cancellation policy. It has been our experience that back-to-back audits where the stage 1 and stage 2 are just a few days or weeks apart are almost always problematic. And we do encourage you to allow yourself an appropriate amount of breathing room between the stage 1 and stage 2 assessments. Use your time between stage 1 and stage 2 again, to dig into your stage 1 report and make sure that you've addressed any areas of concern. Failure to do so will likely lead to nonconformances being issued during your Stage 2 audit. And obviously, that is something that you want to avoid. In conclusion, we want our clients to feel confident and comfortable with the Stage 1 audit process. We try to take a lot of care with the pre-Stage 1 phase, and we want to make sure that you're getting as much support as we can give you between your auditor and the executive committee to make the Stage 1 process as seamless as possible. We do wish you every success in your certification journey. At this time, I will open the question portion of the dashboard and take your questions. David Bachtel, I do hope I'm pronouncing that right, asks, do companies already certified under ISO 9001-2008 need to go through the Stage 1 audit to be certified to 9001-2015? David, the answer to that is no. You would be permitted to complete a transition audit without first going through a Stage 1 if you are already 9001-2008 certified. Are there any other questions I can answer today? Okay, well, I do thank you all for your time. I wish you a pleasant day.